Long before Medusa became one of the most feared creatures in Greek mythology, she was not a monster. She did not have snakes for hair. She could not turn people to stone. And heroes did not travel across the world to hunt her. Once, she was simply a young woman, a mortal, beautiful beyond compare, and devoted to the gods. For centuries, people have remembered Medusa as a creature of terror. They remember the snakes, the stone statues, the severed head carried by a hero. But few remember the woman she used to be. Few remember the life she lost. And even fewer ask the question that still lingers thousands of years later. Was Medusa truly a monster? Or was she a victim of powers far greater than herself? This is not the story of a beast. It is the story of a young woman whose fate was shaped by gods, and whose name would become immortal long after her humanity had been forgotten. In the ancient world, where gods walked among mortals and legends were born beneath the Mediterranean sun, there lived a young woman named Medusa. Unlike many figures in Greek mythology, Medusa was not born divine. She was not the daughter of a god. She possessed no magical gifts, no supernatural strength, no power over storms or seas. She was human, and yet people across Greece spoke of her as if she were something extraordinary. Travelers carried stories of her beauty from city to city. Merchants spoke of her in crowded marketplaces. Poets mentioned her in their verses. Some claimed her eyes were brighter than the morning sky. Others praised her graceful movements. But one feature was admired above all others: her hair, long, golden, and shining like sunlight upon calm water. Many young men dreamed of winning her affection. Many women envied her beauty. Yet Medusa herself rarely sought attention. Unlike others who might have embraced fame, she preferred a quieter life. She devoted herself to Athena, the goddess of wisdom, the goddess of strategy, the protector of heroes and cities. High upon a rocky hill overlooking the sea stood Athena's temple. Its white marble columns gleamed beneath the sun. Its sacred halls echoed with prayers and rituals. Inside those walls, order ruled above all else. The temple was a place of discipline, a place of devotion, a place where the mortal world seemed to touch the divine. And it was there that Medusa spent much of her life. Each morning, she climbed the temple steps before sunrise. She helped maintain the sacred grounds. She prepared offerings. She lit incense before Athena's statue. As the first rays of dawn entered the temple, she whispered prayers to the goddess she admired, to Medusa. Athena represented everything noble: wisdom, strength, justice. She believed the goddess watched over her. She believed her service mattered. She believed the gods rewarded devotion. At the time, she had no reason to think otherwise. Her future seemed bright, peaceful, filled with endless possibilities. But fate was already moving toward her, invisible, silent, and unstoppable. Far above the world of mortals, the gods watched, and among them, few rivalries burned as fiercely as the one between Athena and Poseidon. The two Olympians had clashed many times before. Both were powerful. Both were proud. Neither accepted being overshadowed. Long ago, they had even competed for the right to become the patron deity of a great city. Poseidon offered a gift of power. Athena offered a gift of wisdom. The city chose Athena, and though the contest ended, the bitterness remained. The gods rarely forgot an insult. Poseidon ruled the seas. His moods shaped the oceans. When he was pleased, the waters remained calm. When he was angry, storms rose without warning, ships vanished, coastlines trembled. Entire cities feared his wrath. Power came naturally to him. So did arrogance. He was accustomed to taking what he desired, accustomed to being obeyed, and when something caught his attention, he rarely let it go. One day, his gaze fell upon Medusa. Perhaps he noticed her beauty. Perhaps he admired her devotion. Perhaps he simply saw another mortal whose life could be altered by a god's whim. No one knows for certain. The myths tell different versions, but they all lead to the same tragedy. The attention of a god can be a dangerous thing, especially when that god is Poseidon, and especially when the person who attracts that attention is powerless to resist it. The day began like countless others. The sea breeze drifted through the temple columns. Sunlight illuminated the marble floors. The scent of incense lingered in the air. For Medusa, it seemed ordinary. A peaceful day beneath Athena's protection. She could not know it would be the last day of her old life. At some point, Poseidon entered the temple. Ancient storytellers describe what followed in different ways. The details vary. The interpretations change. But one fact remains consistent. The sacred sanctuary of Athena was violated, its purity shattered, its holiness broken. When word of the event reached Athena, the goddess was furious. The temple had been dishonored, a sacred place had been defiled. Her anger shook the heavens. Medusa waited. Surely Athena would understand. Surely the goddess she had served so faithfully would protect her. Surely justice would prevail. But the gods do not always behave as mortals hope they will. Athena's gaze turned toward Medusa, and everything changed. At first, Medusa felt only fear. Then came the pain. A strange sensation spread through her body, as though invisible hands were reshaping her very existence. She reached for her hair, the feature for which she had been admired throughout Greece, and felt movement. Not the movement of wind, not the movement of loose strands, something alive, something writhing. She looked in horror as golden locks twisted into serpents. Dozens of them, their scales glistening, their tongues flickering through the air. The snakes hissed around her face, coiling, twisting, never still. Her transformation continued. The woman who had once inspired admiration now inspired terror. And then came Athena's final punishment. The cruelest part of all. Anyone who looked directly into Medusa's eyes would be turned instantly into stone. The curse isolated her from every living creature. No friend could approach her. No stranger could greet her. No loved one could look upon her face. Even a moment of eye contact meant death. Medusa begged for mercy, but none came. The gods had spoken, and divine decisions were rarely questioned. Word of the curse spread quickly. Fear traveled faster than truth. Soon people no longer spoke of Medusa, the devoted servant, or Medusa, the faithful worshiper, or Medusa, the young woman. They spoke only of Medusa, the monster. Children whispered her name with fear. Travelers repeated frightening stories, and everywhere she went, doors closed, faces turned away. The world she once knew vanished before her eyes. Eventually, Medusa stopped trying to remain among people. There was no place left for her, no city that would welcome her, no temple that would shelter her, no community willing to see anything beyond the curse. So she left. She traveled far from civilization, far from crowded harbors and busy marketplaces, far from the temples of the gods, until she reached a remote island surrounded by dark cliffs and restless seas. There, she made her home. The island was bleak. Jagged rocks rose from the water like broken teeth. Powerful waves crashed endlessly against the shoreline. Storm clouds often gathered overhead. At night, the wind howled through the cliffs like distant voices. Few ships approached, fewer still landed, and yet some always came, not to help, not to understand, but to kill. The stories about Medusa had spread across Greece. Many believed defeating her would bring glory. Others hoped to become famous. Some simply wished to prove their courage. One by one, they arrived. Warriors carrying swords, hunters carrying spears, adventurers dreaming of heroic songs. Each believed they would succeed where others had failed. Each imagined themselves returning home as legends. None truly understood what awaited them. Most attacked the moment they saw her. Most never considered that she might be afraid too, that she might be lonely, that she might have once been human. And every time, the result was the same. A glance, a scream, silence, another statue. Years passed, then decades. The island slowly filled with stone figures, frozen soldiers, frozen hunters, frozen dreamers. Some appeared shocked, some looked terrified, others still held weapons raised toward an enemy who no longer wished to fight. Medusa walked among them often. They were the closest thing she had to company, a tragic forest of stone, a reminder that anyone who approached her was doomed. Sometimes, she climbed the highest cliffs and looked toward the horizon. Far away, she could see ships crossing the sea, tiny lights moving through the darkness, signs of a world she could never return to. A world that remembered her only as a monster, and as the years stretched into silence, Medusa began to wonder if anyone still remembered the woman she used to be. While Medusa lived in isolation on her lonely island, far across the sea, another story was beginning. In the kingdom of Seriphos lived a young man named Perseus. Unlike Medusa, Perseus was no ordinary mortal. He was the son of Zeus himself, yet his life had never been easy. As a child, he and his mother had been cast into the sea inside a wooden chest. They had drifted helplessly across the waves until fate carried them safely to Seriphos. There they survived. There Perseus grew into a strong and capable young man. But trouble soon found him. The island's ruler, King Polydectes, desired Perseus's mother. He wished to marry her, yet Perseus stood in his way. As long as the young hero remained nearby, the king could not easily force his wishes upon her. So Polydectes devised a plan, a cruel plan. One day he announced a grand feast. Guests arrived carrying gifts, gold, jewels, fine horses. When Perseus arrived empty-handed, the king mocked him before everyone. Embarrassed, Perseus proudly declared that he could bring any gift the king desired. Polydectes smiled. The trap had been sprung. "I want the head of Medusa." The room fell silent. Even the bravest warriors knew the name. Medusa, the Gorgon, the monster whose gaze turned men into stone. No one expected Perseus to return. That was exactly what the king intended, but Perseus had already given his word. And heroes are often destroyed by promises they refuse to break. That night, Perseus stared out across the sea. For the first time, doubt entered his heart. How could anyone defeat Medusa? Strength would not help. Courage would not help. One look into her eyes would mean death. Yet the gods were watching. Athena appeared first, the same goddess who had once cursed Medusa. Though she showed no regret, she offered aid to Perseus. Soon Hermes arrived as well. the swift-footed messenger of Olympus. Together, they equipped the young hero for his impossible mission. Hermes gave him a curved sword. Its blade shone like moonlight, sharp enough to cut through anything. Athena presented him with a polished bronze shield. Its surface reflected the world like a mirror. "You must never look directly at her," the goddess warned. "See her only through the shield." Other gifts awaited him: winged sandals that would allow him to fly, a magical pouch capable of safely carrying Medusa's head, and eventually, a helm that granted invisibility. Armed with divine treasures, Perseus seemed unstoppable. Yet even with such gifts, reaching Medusa would not be easy. First, he needed to find her, and only one group of beings knew the way: the Grey. The Graea were ancient, older than many kingdoms, older than many legends. 3 sisters, with gray skin, gray hair, and a single eye shared among them. When one wished to see, she borrowed the eye. When another needed it, the eye was passed from hand to hand. Perseus found them in a desolate land far from civilization. He watched silently as the sisters exchanged their precious eye. Then he acted. As the eye passed between them, he snatched it away. The sisters cried out in panic. Blind and helpless, they begged for its return. Perseus remained firm. "I will return it," he said. "But first, you must tell me how to find Medusa." The Graea resisted, then pleaded. Finally, they surrendered. They revealed the path, beyond distant seas, beyond dangerous waters, to a lonely island where the Gorgon lived in exile. Only after receiving the information did Perseus return the eye. The sisters quickly hid it from him, but the damage was done. The hero now knew where his destiny awaited, and so he continued onward, toward Medusa, toward death, or toward glory. The journey ended beneath a moonless sky. Perseus stood upon the shores of Medusa's island. The sea roared behind him. Cold winds swept across the cliffs, and everywhere around him stood stone statues, hundreds of them, silent guardians of the island, frozen forever in their final moments. Some still held swords, others clutched shields. A few appeared to be running, their faces twisted in terror. Perseus moved carefully among them. Each statue told a story. Each had once been alive. Each had believed they could defeat Medusa. None had succeeded. The deeper he traveled, the quieter the world became. Eventually he saw her, Medusa, sleeping among the rocks. For a moment, the stories seemed wrong. The monster of legend did not look terrifying. She looked lonely. The snakes resting around her head shifted softly in their sleep. The moonlight illuminated her face, and for the briefest instant, Perseus saw not a beast, but a woman abandoned by gods and feared by mortals, a woman who had spent years alone, perhaps decades, perhaps longer. The hero hesitated, only for a moment. Then duty returned. He raised Athena's shield, using its reflection as his guide. Step by step, he approached, never looking directly at her, only at the image within the bronze. The air seemed frozen. Even the sea felt silent. Then, with one swift movement, Perseus swung the sword, a flash of silver, a single strike, and Medusa's long tragedy came to an end. The moment Medusa died, something miraculous occurred. From her blood emerged 2 extraordinary beings. The first was Chrysaor, a mighty warrior. The second was Pegasus, a magnificent winged horse, white as fresh snow, brilliant as moonlight. His enormous wings unfolded against the night sky. According to the myths, Both were children of Poseidon. Their birth had been tied to Medusa's fate from the beginning. Pegasus rose into the air, higher and higher, until he vanished among the stars. Even in death, Medusa had given the world another legend, yet Perseus could not remain. The severed head still possessed its terrible power. Its eyes could still turn living creatures into stone. Carefully, he placed it inside the magical pouch and began the journey home. Perseus used Medusa's head many times during his travels. When enemies threatened him, the Gorgon's gaze ended the battle instantly. When monsters attacked, they became statues. Even powerful warriors fell helpless before its power. Eventually, Perseus returned to Seriphos. There he discovered that King Polydectes had continued tormenting his mother. The king believed Perseus dead. He laughed when the young hero entered the hall. The laughter did not last. Perseus revealed Medusa's head. Within moments, the king and his followers were transformed into stone. The cruel ruler who had sent him to die would never harm anyone again. The quest was complete. The hero had triumphed. Songs were written about his courage. Poets celebrated his victory. His name spread throughout Greece. And as often happens, the hero became famous, while the fallen monster became a footnote. Yet Medusa's story did not end with her death. Athena eventually took the Gorgon's head and placed it upon her shield, the Aegis. There it became a symbol of divine power. For centuries, artists carved Medusa's face onto temples. Warriors painted her image onto armor. People believed her terrifying appearance could ward off evil. Ironically, the woman once feared by everyone became a protector, but questions remained. Questions that still survive today. Was Medusa truly evil, or was she a victim? Why was she punished? Why was Poseidon never forced to suffer the same fate? Different generations offered different answers. Some saw a monster, others saw injustice. And perhaps that is why her story continues to fascinate us, because Medusa is more than a creature with snakes for hair. She is one of mythology's greatest tragedies. A woman transformed by forces she could not control. A victim remembered as a villain. A lonely soul whose humanity was buried beneath legend. Today, thousands of years after the fall of ancient Greece, Medusa remains one of the most recognizable figures in mythology. Her face appears in books, in paintings, in films, and in stories told across the world. People still debate who she really was, a monster, a victim, or something in between. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in the middle, for beneath the snakes, beneath the curse, beneath the legend, there was once a young woman who believed the gods would protect her. Instead, they changed her fate forever. And that is why the story of Medusa endures. Not because she was the most terrifying monster in Greek mythology, but because she may have been one of its most tragic.